You never expect betrayal to come from the person you swore your life to. I met Emma in college. She was beautiful, vibrant, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. I was the quiet one, engineering major, always buried in books. But somehow, she noticed me. And I fell hard. We got married at 25. I had just started working as a junior technician at a logistics firm. She, on the other hand, had dreams, expensive ones. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, weekend getaways with her friends. She wanted a life she thought she deserved. And I tried so hard to give it to her. I picked up overtime, worked side gigs, sacrificed sleep and time. I skipped lunches so she could have brunches. I drove a rusted old car so she could take selfies in Ubers. She didn't work. Said she didn't have to. Said her job was to be presentable, to keep me motivated. I didn't complain. I thought this was marriage, partnership, sacrifice. Until the pieces started falling apart. It started with subtle things. Late-night phone calls she'd take in the bathroom. New jewelry she swore were gifts from old friends. Trips she took without telling me until the last minute. When I asked questions, she brushed me off, called me paranoid. Told me I was insecure because I didn't make real money. Then came the raise. I got promoted, finally, after 3 years of slogging. My boss, Richard, congratulated me with a smirk that didn't sit right. But I ignored it. I was too relieved to question it. I told Emma that night over dinner. She barely looked up from her phone. And then the real blow came a week later. I left work early because of a migraine. Pulled up into the driveway and noticed a car in the garage that wasn't mine or Emma's. I walked in quietly, every hair on my neck standing on edge. And there she was, on the couch, wrapped around Richard, my boss. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there. Emma saw me first. She didn't even flinch. "Oh," she said, voice cold. "You're home early." Richard stood up, stammering something, trying to zip up his pants. I didn't care. My eyes were on Emma. "You," my voice cracked. "You're cheating on me." "With him?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't make this a bigger deal than it is. You think I could survive forever on your pathetic little paycheck?" Richard had the decency to look ashamed, but not enough to stop buttoning up his shirt and walking out without a word. Emma stood, arms folded. "Let's not pretend like you didn't see this coming. You've been boring for years. Working late, tired all the time. I deserve better, Peter. And Richard, he sees that. You used me," I said, barely able to breathe. "I worked myself to the bone for you. Then maybe you should have worked smarter, not harder." She left that night, no tears, no guilt. Just packed her things and left with Richard. And I stood there, in our empty house, wondering how love could turn into something so unrecognizable. After Emma left, silence became my new roommate. It echoed in the corners of every room, where her laughter used to bounce, where her perfume used to linger. I couldn't touch the couch. Couldn't sleep in the bed. Everything reminded me of the betrayal that had been growing under my nose while I was breaking my back to make ends meet. Work became unbearable. Richard, the man who'd slept with my wife, was still my boss. He didn't fire me. No. That would have been too merciful. Instead, he kept me around, like a trophy of his conquest. I saw it in the way he smirked during meetings. In the way he occasionally asked, "How are things, Pete?" With a glint in his eye. And I fell apart. I started drinking. Not enough to ruin me completely, just enough to numb the pain. I stopped calling my friends back. Stopped answering family. I was too ashamed to admit how stupid I'd been. Too humiliated to explain how I was cheated on by my wife and my boss in one swift blow. There were nights I sat in the dark staring at our wedding photo, wondering what I had done wrong. Was it me? Was I not man enough? Not rich enough? Not interesting enough? But deep down, a small voice kept whispering the truth: it was never about me. 2 months after she left, I received the divorce papers. Neatly typed, no letter, no explanation. She didn't ask for alimony. She didn't need to. Richard had money. Real money. I signed them without a fight. What was the point? The house, I sold. I couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, and even if I could, I didn't want to stay in a mausoleum of broken promises. I rented a one-bedroom apartment, modest and quiet. A place to hide. A place to heal. And slowly, very slowly, I began to rebuild. One night, sitting on the floor with a cold beer in hand and a laptop resting on a milk crate I used as a table, I started teaching myself about investing. Stocks, coding, automation, anything to sharpen my mind again. Anything to take my thoughts away from the past. I worked during the day at the same job, ignoring Richard, tolerating the humiliation. But at night, I was building something else, something mine. I started a side hustle. Then another. I freelanced, I coded, I traded. I made mistakes. Lost money. Gained knowledge. Lost sleep. Gained perspective. And little by little, the fog started to lift. The pain didn't go away. But it started to fuel me instead of consume me. I'll never forget the first time my side hustle earned more in a month than my salary did. I stared at the screen, blinking, not believing the numbers. I wasn't rich, not yet. But it was the moment I realized I didn't have to stay trapped in the wreckage Emma and Richard left behind. I could rise. I would rise. They had broken me. But I was going to rebuild stronger. Smarter. Sharper. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was rebirth. The man I became over the next 3 years was nothing like the one Emma walked out on. I left the logistics firm, on my terms. I handed in my resignation with a calm smile and shook Richard's hand like I was thanking him for a dinner party. He looked confused, maybe even a little nervous. Good. Let him wonder. Let him sweat. Because while he'd been busy enjoying what he thought was his prize, I had built something better. The coding projects I started in my tiny apartment. They turned into a business. Then into two. Then into something big enough for people to start calling me sir and asking for my opinion on tech forums. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I bought my first property at 33, small, smart, profitable. Then came another. And another. Before long, I had a portfolio, a business account. And enough passive income to never worry about punching someone else's clock again. But it wasn't just the money that changed. It was me. I started lifting weights again, not to impress anyone, but to feel strong in my own skin. I traveled, not to escape, but to expand. I met new people. Good people. People who saw me, not my salary. I found joy in the smallest things: coffee on a balcony, early morning walks, the sound of rain against clean windows. I didn't need validation. I didn't need praise. And I certainly didn't need Emma. But life's funny, isn't it? Just when you think the past is buried, it knocks on your door like a ghost desperate for resurrection. I remember the day she came back like a scene etched in glass. I was sitting in my office, my own office, in the top-floor condo I'd bought in the same city where she left me broken. I was reviewing a proposal for a startup I was mentoring when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there she was, Emma. The woman who left me for my boss. The woman who mocked my efforts, scorned my loyalty, and spat on my love. Her hair was still blonde, but not as glossy. Her clothes were still designer, but dated. Her eyes, Once blazing with vanity, now carried something I never thought I'd see in them. Desperation. "Peter," she said, almost a whisper. I didn't say anything. Just stared. She licked her lips. "Can I come in?" For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. Like some twisted memory had walked out of my subconscious and onto my doorstep. Emma. After 5 years. At my door. I stepped aside without saying a word. Let her in, not because she deserved it, but because I wanted to see what this was. Curiosity. Closure. I wasn't sure yet. She walked in slowly, eyes scanning my condo, the high ceilings, the marble counters, the framed awards on the wall. I watched her take it all in. Saw her jaw tighten ever so slightly. "This is nice," she said. "Really nice." I offered her nothing in response. Just silence. She sat down on the edge of the sofa like she didn't know whether she was welcome. I didn't tell her otherwise. "So," she began, clasping her hands together. "You look good." I crossed my arms. "Why are you here?" She flinched at the bluntness. But I wasn't going to sugarcoat things, not for her. She paused, took a breath. "I messed up, Peter. I know I did. I don't know where else to go." That caught my attention. "Richard kicked you out?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "He left me. 2 years ago." I almost laughed. "Almost." She went on, voice trembling just enough to suggest she wanted pity. "He had someone else. Younger. Prettier. I had no idea. He cleaned out the accounts and left me with nothing. The house was in his name. Everything was." I watched her for a beat. "So now you're broke?" She nodded, ashamed. "I've been staying with a friend, but I can't keep depending on people. I need a job. I need a place to stay. I remembered you were always kind. I thought maybe you could help me." I stared at her. This woman, who once told me I wasn't man enough for her. Who laughed at my efforts. Who traded me in like a used car. Now sitting in my home, begging. Life really is poetic. I walked over to the window and looked out over the skyline. My city. My life. "You came here because you thought I'd still be the same fool who'd do anything for you." She stood up, flustered. "No. That's not what I meant." I turned to face her. "Let me make one thing clear, Emma. The man you left behind. He's gone. Buried under 5 years of blood, sweat, and self-respect. She swallowed hard. "I just need a chance. Just something to get back on my feet." I nodded slowly. "All right. I'll help you." Her eyes lit up. "Really?" I walked over to the coffee table, pulled open a drawer, and handed her a card. It read, "Downtown Shelter for Women, Transitional Housing Program. They help people like you. No questions asked." She looked at the card, then at me, like I'd slapped her. "You're serious?" she whispered. I met her gaze. Dead serious. She didn't take the card. Emma stood there holding it between 2 fingers like it was a crumpled tissue. Her lips curled in subtle disdain, the way they used to when she thought she was above something. "I'm not a homeless person, Peter," she said, her voice brittle. "You came to me," I replied. "That's the help I'm offering." She dropped the card on the table, slow and deliberate. "Don't act like you're some saint now. You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I said calmly. "My choices did." Her expression cracked. She looked around the condo again, the art on the walls, the espresso machine, the city views. I could see it in her eyes. She thought all this should have been hers. She stepped closer. Peter. I was confused back then. I made a mistake. But I never stopped caring about you. I think about you all the time. I raised an eyebrow. Do you even believe that? Her voice softened, sugar-coated like old times. We were good together once. Remember that trip to Big Bear? How you held me when I was sick. You were always the one who really understood me. I could almost hear the gears grinding behind her pretty eyes, scrambling to rewrite history. To rebrand herself as misunderstood instead of manipulative. She touched my arm gently, a gesture that used to melt me. Now, it just felt cold. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. Just let me stay here. For a little while. Just until I find something. No. She blinked. What? No, I repeated. You don't get to cheat, mock, leave, and then walk back in when it's convenient. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your safety net. She scoffed. Wow. So this is about revenge? No, I said evenly. This is about boundaries. Something I should have had back when I was paying your credit card bills while you slept with my boss. She stepped back, her mouth opening and closing like she didn't know what to say. For the first time, her manipulative charm wasn't working. You can be sorry, Emma. That's your right. But you don't get access to my life just because you regret what you lost. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't move. Not out of cruelty. Out of survival. You've changed, she said bitterly. I had to, I replied. You made sure of that. She stood in silence, defeated, her tricks exhausted. No more pleading. No more seduction. Just silence. After a moment, I picked up the card from the table and handed it back to her. They'll help you. Take the step. She took it this time. Wordlessly. And when she walked out of my condo, she didn't look back. When the door shut behind Emma, it was as if the last ghost of my past finally left the room. Not with a dramatic scream or an explosion of fury. Just a quiet click of the door. And silence. But not the kind that echoes with old pain. This silence was peaceful. Whole. Like finally waking up from a nightmare and realizing you're safe.